Fantasy Hockey Picks and Bets presented by Prize Picks here on the Mayo Media Network. I am Matt Moody, joined by DJ Mitchell to run through Tuesday's 6 games in the NHL streets. DJ, how you doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird to only be covering 6 games. I feel like every one has been 10 plus lately. So I'm excited to definitely a little bit more concentrated. We can focus in a little bit more on each game and discuss a few more minute details. So it might be interesting. This slate's going to be super weird. We have one true back-to-back. We would have had 2, but unfortunately Dallas and Nashville did not play, and we're going to have to be mindful of if that game is going to go off. And then the rest, we have a couple teams coming back after long hiatuses and just a lot of interesting news and notes from that. So I think there's a lot to cover here. So Matt, is there anything you want to start with before we get going?
Yeah, no, I mean, 6 games, but it does feel like there's the news of about 3 weeks because, just we haven't seen some of these teams in, the month of February even. And yeah, 2021 could get crazier, I guess, but, a weather postponement after multiple, COVID virus postponements. Like if you had told me a year ago this was the state of the NHL at this point, winter weather in Dallas causing a cancellation, bring it on. Bring it on. I don't know what else is next. So
yeah, it is crazy. I mean, honestly, the weather in the entire country, there's like a couple pockets that aren't in terrible situations, and the rest is like freezing for no reason that never does. And then I'm getting a foot of snow tonight, and we just got to get through a couple more weeks. I swear we're going to be good to go, right?
I mean, that's what they were saying in March of last year. So
yeah, it's just a couple more weeks. Okay.
All right.
But yeah, we have 6 games to cover. And like I said, there's a ton of news and notes in each game. So we're just going to go game by game like we always do. Again, sponsored by Prize Picks. So get over on prizepicks.com, use the code MMN for a match deposit up to $100. Go over there right now, get that done, and we'll have picks tomorrow for who we like the most. They've been actually pretty good lately. I think the first time we did it, I missed and you hit it. And then the second time and third and fourth, we both hit, I believe. I've been tracking it, but I got to find that list. But we'll get to the Islanders and Sabres if you're ready.
Yeah, no. So this game we saw on Monday. The Islanders sort of had their way with the Sabres, especially late. I think the Sabres went 19 minutes of the third period or so without even a shot on goal, trailing. So this was a very prototypical Islanders type game, dead in the pace, just basically do not much of anything. And I kind of feel like that's what we're headed for again here on Tuesday. Both the teams on a back-to-back. The Sabres should get some reinforcements. We aren't positive on this, but, as we all know, the Sabres coming in, having not played since January 31st, still have some players on the COVID list, namely Ristolainen will definitely be out in this one, as well as guys who should be returning, including Brandon Montour and Jake McCabe. So they really ran out a ragtag group on the blue line on Monday night. The Sabres run out a ragtag group on defense every night, let's be honest, but slightly more NHL experience, I guess, drawing back in on Tuesday. We project, again, we're not positive on this. But that's sort of, to me, like this whole thing, like the Islanders definitely do have the better play coming in. The Sabres, even before their hiatus, got sort of creamed by the Devils. So, it's definitely not an area that I think the Sabres will control much of the tempo. I kind of am leaning toward the Islanders here, and I'm definitely leaning toward the under myself. Do you have any sort of other thoughts there?
I think the under is strong. It's interesting that the Sabres kind of dominated the first period but gave up 2 goals. The second period, they looked somewhat competent, but the Islanders maybe outplayed them. It was pretty even. And in the third, they just got absolutely steamrolled. It's frustrating. As we mentioned, we're Sabres fans. Watching that game is just, the reason why the Islanders hit the under so often is just because they went into complete shutdown mode in the third, and the Sabres had no answer. So, yeah, I like the under. I think it's a bit of a toss-up in Buffalo. I lean towards the Islanders, but I'm not incredibly high on it. So I think I'll just look at the under and then maybe go to some props. The one prop I won't be betting ever again is the Rasmus Dahlin shot on goal prop. I have retired that one. It is on DraftKings this time at 2.5 plus 115. I'm retiring myself from playing the Sabres props. I think I have to retire from everything, honestly, after saying I was going to bet $1 million on Dahlin. It was a joke, obviously. I don't bet $1 million in a night, but
just 100,000 here, right?
Yeah, just 100,000. No, it was just. I really don't hate anything about my bet. Like, people can say that it's stupid to bet a defenseman because of the added variance in players shooting from further away. Dahlin had a decent number of shot attempts, like maybe 4 or 5. Only one got on net. It happens. That's why you don't put too much on a defenseman. So, while I still like that bet and he's hit it every night except for tonight, we can move on to more of our favorite bets. Matt, is there any that you like here on the player prop side?
Yeah, I mean, Anders Lee to score is kind of interesting. He's plus 250. Again, I really like Brock Nelson. We talked about him on the Morning's Gate podcast as being, in play at center. Just a whole lot of, good things about Brock Nelson. Anders Lee should not be less likely to score than he is. That's just a fact. So Anders Lee, I think, is an interesting guy. His shot prop also over 2.5, I like a bit. But that's sort of my main thoughts here. I don't really want to bet the no on, say, like a Taylor Hall point. Even though I think that's the right move, plus 125 that he doesn't pick up a point. I just don't trust that Kruger, won't do something crazy, like maybe playing him with Jack Eichel. So I'm not really willing to take that plunge, and we won't know, unfortunately, until about 6:30 tomorrow, what their lines will look like here. So I don't really want to do too much player-based betting on the Sabres at this point.
No. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, this game really sets up to be a dud. I think if you want to get, kind of crazy out there, just go correct score, like 3-1 Islanders again. Or it's kind of tough to think they're going to back to the same thing, but like something in that nature, maybe even 2-0 Islanders, something like that could be fun to put like on way different odds, or just bet the under and move on. But we can move on unless if there's anything else we want to cover here.
I know. I mean, 3-1, 22-1. Not terrible, honestly.
Yeah, not terrible.
If you like the Islanders and the under, that's a fun one.
Or even 4-1. I mean, the Sabres pulled their goalie with like 2 minutes left when they were down 3-1, and the Islanders just didn't score. And actually, the Sabres had to put back their goalie because the Islanders just wouldn't let them clear their zone. So I think 4-1, something like that. It could be a lot of fun. But we can get to Washington, Pittsburgh if you're ready.
Just one more note on the Sabres side. Obviously we're assuming they switch things up from a line perspective. But Jeff Skinner skated on the top line there with Eichel and Olofsson. So if that holds, Jeff Skinner's definitely a great DFS value. Any bets you can get with him probably would hit. He, I think, had 3 shots on goal. So, wasn't like he would have gotten you there in a player prop, parlay. So Jeff Skinner, if things hold, is definitely a screaming value on basically DFS sites and maybe the shots props if you can find it. But we can move over to Washington at Pittsburgh, a rematch of I feel like we've said this before, a rematch of the high scoring affair from Sunday between Washington and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh minus 125 favorites right now. The over under is a 6.5. So DJ, something you love to say on these shows is if it's a Canadian game, it's a 6.5. We might need to sort of, if it's a Pittsburgh game, it's probably a 6.5.
It really has been that way with the Penguins. Their goaltending has been bottom 5 in save percentage. It probably continues to be. It seems to be the big issue with the Penguins all year, and I think it continues. I'm not ever super keen on putting a lot of money on a 6.5 just because bounces go one way or another. Puck off the post or 2, and all of a sudden you're looking at a completely different game. So 6.5 I think is very fair. But I'm probably going to focus more on, if I'm building a parlay, just to put together one of these props. I've been really riding the Brian Rust prop for seems like a while now. It's not on DraftKings for a shot on goal prop, but the one I think more interesting thing to do is maybe just put like a 2-point plus on a Crosby or an Ovechkin. Something like that seems decently likely to, pretty likely.
That's where DJ, is there a reason you wouldn't do 3 points maybe on a Sidney Crosby bet?
I mean, Matt's making fun of me because basically I like to look at the boosted props just to see what they are. And FanDuel had one. I was like, this is interesting. It's like both of them, either of them get a 3 point game, then you hit, but like the odds weren't Fitinovi, either or hit 3+ and you get like a boosted, but it ended up actually being worse than either of them individually on DraftKings. So he's making fun of me because I didn't look, but that's why I have a good friend like you to double check for me.
And that's why you just do some back of the envelope, even when they say, oh, it's an odds boost.
Yeah.
It
might not. I can't believe it. Yeah. And the odds seemed so good. I was like, oh my God, these are crazy. Yeah. And they just weren't that good. It was funny. But, going, again, just getting to what happened on Sunday, 9-goal game. Ovechkin had 26 minutes of ice time. I think he only had 1 point. Yeah, he had the 1 assist, which is just weird. Crosby, 18 minutes of ice time, but that was still up there with the top, especially on 5-on-5 with him, Rust, and Gensel all leading the way. So either one of those, I think multi-point games is really on the table. So if you want to do 3, go right ahead and do 3. I did it. It was a lot of fun. Crosby had me sweating at the end. He got that empty netter, and I was like, wait a minute, there's a chance. But I think, 2 points, that plus 205 for Ovechkin is pretty cool.
Yeah. The only issue with Pittsburgh right now is that they put Gensel, Rust, and Crosby together. That leaves out, poor Gino. The guy hasn't done anything all year. He's seeing his minutes sort of deteriorate in front of our very eyes. I don't know how much I want to sort of, Sunday was a weird game. I think Washington had like 6 or 7 power play opportunities, which also might be why Ovi had so much ice time. And it wasn't exactly even in that regard. So in a more normal game, maybe we see Malkin, 19, 20 minutes and, power play 1, all that good stuff out of him. But man, the clock's ticking and he's really got to do it for us soon, or it might be just time to cut bait entirely. So I'm not quite ready to, bet like the no on the, Malkin point or anything like that yet. But, I'm just putting Malkin on notice. Like, it's about time you step up, buddy. So he certainly does make sense, DFS wise. He's just so much cheaper than, his point odds and his goal odds would indicate, like, just comparatively speaking. But honestly, I think you just go with the top line here. And you don't look back. You don't think twice because Brian Rust is an absolute animal. You sort of alluded to, any player prop you can get for him is probably mispriced. Like, he is the shooter here.
Yeah. And they're starting to get him right. I mean, DraftKings won't even allow us to really bet a lot on it. They only have him in like the goal or plus 2 goals or 3 goals. They don't even have him in the points, which is frustrating. And the shot prop. So you have to go over to FanDuel if you want to get him. On that. So a little frustrating.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. The only other thing I wanted to mention was that Ovechkin, his shot total over 4.5 is plus 130. It's normally hard to not bet these Ovechkin over shot props, but this one seems about right. So, that's maybe an area where I think my favorite shot prop from this game, barring you can get Brian Rust, that's obviously, I think, if he's 2.5 minus 140 or whatever, like he seems to be on FanDuel, go with that. But I actually think that the Chris Letang is also a decent bet here. Over 2.5 shots is plus 105. I just don't know if I want Ovi at 5 shots or nothing. Especially because last game was such an outlier in terms of their power play. And they had a guy on Ovi's hip. They were basically begging Karlsson to shoot, begging Backstrom to shoot, and probably for good reason. But that's just something I think, these teams that play each other so often, they might find it easier to, either at least force Ovechkin out of his comfort zone. So while I still think Ovi, gets his, multi-point game certainly in store, I think he might be more of a, 1 goal, 1 assist, 3 shots type of game here from him. So just a little bit of concern there in betting the over on Ovi. So anything else before we go over to New Jersey at the Rangers?
No, I think I'm ready. This game, it's the first game back for the Devils in I think the entire month of February, if I'm not mistaken. The Rangers, I feel like they are just such a hit or miss team. I mean, some nights they come out and they look almost world beating. They look like a team that could be a playoff contender. And then the next night they come out and lay an absolute egg. So it's going to be interesting to see The Devils are still battling COVID concerns. They have a number of players out, which we'll get to, a lot of lineup changes. So I think a lot of people will gravitate to the Rangers side at home, just with how many players are missing for the Devils and really just how weak they kind of look on paper, I guess. I guess I'm not opposed to playing either side of this. I kind of might side with, I think I'm going to end up siding with the under on the 6 if it does end up going there, just because I think the Devils are really going to try to shut it down the best they can. It looks like they're really trying to put together more lines besides the first unit that are going to be more defensively minded. I'm not sure what you're thinking here. I just, personally think that's the way I'm leaning right now.
Yeah, I'm sort of in this tough place because, a lot of the sort of indexes I look at, like based off of natural stat trick data, whatever, are really taking into account the shellacking the Devils put on the Sabres before their sort of forced COVID pause. But that had the Devils as one of the highest paced teams, up until that point in the league. And we know that the Rangers are also a team that's going to play with a lot of tempo. So my lean is actually toward the over here, in part because, I don't really trust that either defense can really sort of put the clamp on a game like you're sort of suggesting they will try to. And even if they try to, will it be successful? I don't know. I don't really think so. And secondly, I mean, sort of part of what we're doing is trying to break Zibanejad out of his season-long slump at this point. Like, the guy saw 25 minutes last game against the Bruins, got nothing done. This seems like about as good as time as any. He's coming off of matchups, I believe the Islanders and Boston were the last two teams he has played. Not done anything for us, but unlike Malkin, where you're seeing, 13, 14, 15 minutes in a night, they're feeding Zibanejad every minute he can get, and he's taking shots. He's just not getting the goals. So I'm just sort of banking on, one, the Rangers bouncing back and Zibanejad especially getting going here, and two, the fact that the Devils actually have been pretty decent at creating chances. So any players in particular on the Devils side with all their, COVID absences and reshuffling that we need to consider here?
I mean, I think especially in daily fantasy, it's one Mr. Jesper Bratt, who is minimum salary on DraftKings. And honestly, I'm not positive on FanDuel, but I know he was around, bottom of the barrel pricing. He's a plus 335 to score. First power play, first line with Jack Hughes. It's definitely a fair bet. I think, in this range of the 335s is going to be tough to find someone at a better value. He's a decent rate shooter. He might not be the premium guy there, but I don't know if he's even going to be a focal point, a trigger guy on the power play specifically. I mean, he's only played in a couple games. But, if you look at who's out there, it's Smith, Palmieri, Bratt, Hughes, and Wood. I think him and Palmieri are probably the guys that play the bumper. I haven't seen this unit together, so it's hard to know what they're going to do exactly with, the Zajacs and Heishirs and them. Heishir's been out all year, but, he's on the COVID list. So, just add that to him not playing. So, it's not a foolproof bet. It's definitely playing with a little bit of or a lack of information, but he's probably my favorite over on DraftKings, especially to get the value you need. As far as the shot on goal prop, I don't know if I'll touch the Zibanejad at 3.5, but it's a fair bet, especially if he sees the minutes. He did practice with Kreider and Blackwell, which is a little bit concerning. It sounds like Panarin could play, but we're not really sure yet. I haven't seen anything leaning either way. Matt, did you see anything on that?
Yeah, my assumption was that Panarin would remain out. It's definitely more of a 50-50 call.
Yeah.
But that is interesting. I hadn't seen those updated practice lines because if Panarin plays, that would sort of indicate to me that they're playing Panarin back for Zibanejad.
That's kind of what I was thinking too. That's why I'm like, that is what they practiced on Saturday, and that's what they practice again today. So it's Monday. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to be, if Panarin is playing there, I think that, that could be an interesting stack for sure. A, because it is a lot cheaper than it ever was last year. But, B, I think that it's kind of adds to either of their values as far as their props. Panarin hasn't always been an unbelievable rate shooter, really, to the way he gets it done. He's just an amazing play driver in general. So, it'll be interesting. Is there any player prop, though, that you do really like here?
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of thinking about this, Jack Hughes, the score of point is, plus or minus 118. He's just a really, really, really good player. And we haven't seen him in a while, but he looked really good sort of the first couple weeks of the season. I think I like Jesper Bratt a lot. He's a great two-way player, solid rate stats. DFS definitely a guy you should be considering. But yeah, so I think the Hughes point is a pretty good one. I wouldn't even hate the multi-point game from I guess Zibanejad or Hughes. Both of those guys I think have pretty good value there if you're sort of betting on the over here in particular. So yeah, I do think I think those are sort of the main ones I'm looking at. But yeah, if I had to bet a side, I think I would bet the Rangers as well at minus 148 at the moment. I would expect that to climb to, even especially if Panarin draws back in, that could get up to minus 170 by puck drop. So, yeah, that's sort of where I'm at on this game. Anything else before we move to the later portions of the night?
No, I think that pretty much sums it up, everything I wanted to get to in this game. Definitely check in on morning skates because, as we've mentioned a million times, and we'll keep mentioning it with this COVID stuff, I mean, a player could be on the list and then still somehow play the next day. It's not always that way. Like, we kind of know sometimes, like, they're definitely out, but we don't really know with full certainty. So just keep an eye on it. Like, everything we say now isn't going to go in the blender entirely, but could change tomorrow. So don't take this as gospel. Definitely check in, follow us on Twitter, ask us, join the Discord that we have if you want to get in on that. So you just make sure before you gamble on any of this and put real money on the line that you're double checking.
Yeah, absolutely. So getting to 8:30 start between Nashville and Dallas, we could be going for a record in number of consecutive shows impacted by a postponed game because this Dallas Nashville game was postponed on Monday night because of the winter storm hitting Texas. We already covered that. Doesn't sound like Tuesday will be much better. So hopefully we would have more clarity. This game got canceled, I believe, after lock on Monday night. Like they pretty much came. They went to the teams and said, "Look, we don't want the arena to be using energy or whatever with all the power outages in the Dallas area." So they obliged. We should know, before, well before the evening, what the situation there is with that game. So let's just assume it plays. One of the spots that we were really keying in on Monday's slate was Rupe Hintz. Some of the taxi squad movements seem to indicate that Rupe Hintz would be out on Monday. If he were to be out on Monday, again, on Tuesday, Alex Radulov remains out. Rupe Hintz being out, there's only 4 guys there with a guaranteed power play 1 job, that being Klingberg, Pavelski, Gurianov, and Jamie Benn. That sort of puts a second power play 1 job, or a 5th power play 1 job up for grabs. So there's a couple candidates that could fill that spot. One being Miro Heiskanen. They would sort of have to reshuffle things, maybe move Klingberg down to the half wall. And the second one I think might be a bit more likely is Jason Robertson. They seem to really like this kid, and he's been playing pretty well as of late. So he's been playing with Gurianov at 5-on-5 and Hintz at 5-on-5. So I really like anything to do with Jason Robertson, just taking a gamble on the availability of Rupe Hintz and just sort of going in that direction. But besides the Dallas side of things, is there anything to like here with Nashville? How do you feel about like the total of this game or the money line?
I mean, Nashville's been so bad. I mean, they barely escape with a win against Detroit, and then they lose to Detroit the next night. And, it's been a mess. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. They're 6-9 on the year. Not a nice record, though, in this case.
No, not very nice.
They did conceivably go back to Duchesne with Forsberg and Arvidsson. I don't know if that's going to stick or not. We have to kind of wait and see. But they're bad. They've been bad. I'm not saying that they couldn't bounce back a little bit, but it's been, it seems like every night when something's working, something else isn't. I don't know if there's going to be one specific thing that I'm going to be in on more than anything else. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing in either site a point total for Robertson. I was hoping to get him at like a pretty decent value for 1 point, but we're not going to get that. So I have been pretty in on the Forsberg to get over half a point on FanDuel, and it's only minus 122. Thinking they're not going to get shut out could definitely doable. they're going to see a ton of minutes, like 18, 19, 20 minutes with power play one time. I mean, the first unit did go back to Arvidsson, Duchesne, Forsberg, Ellis, and Yossi, which I think we've seen before. Maybe we haven't, but I'm pretty sure we've seen that before, which is probably their best look entirely. So I could see a scenario where they could find a couple goals. 5.5 seems fair. I'm not in or out on that. I think it's really, right on the money. I think it could definitely be a coin flip either way. I think if I'm going to bet on the line, I just take Dallas though. They've been the better team. I think they continue that. Even if they're missing hints, I still think that their defense and goaltending is just good enough to get the job done. But I think I'm more looking to try to find some sort of value in this game. I think that I don't know. I'm not sure there's one guy that I'm super duper in on, but Matt, is there any player props that you're really in
on? Just sort of from like the overall standpoint of this game, I think that the Stars goaltender, it was supposed to be Khudobin on Monday and then Ottinger on Tuesday. So I'm guessing they just shift Khudobin back a day. If it's him though, I really like that. I think that, I think this is probably the best spot you're getting for a goaltender on this whole slate. So my favorite goaltender, trying to fit him in if I can on the DFS sites. And then my favorite player prop from this game is the John Klingberg over on shots. Just plus 135 for the over 2.5. Like we sort of talked about with no Rube hints, it's not like he's a big shot generator or anything. But I just love guys on the top power play. Klingberg always has the puck on his stick. He's always patrolling that blue line. So I think that's my favorite bet here in terms of the overall value it offers. If you find Ryan Ellis, I also like that. The way that their power play is structured, the way you mentioned it with, the Duchesne line and then Ellis and Yossi both on that unit, it's basically just Roman Yossi trying to find Ellis for the one-timer.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of fun too.
Yeah, plus 390 for a power play point over on FanDuel. So Ryan Ellis.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, I like 0.5.
That. So yeah, I like that too. I was kind of what I was going to get to is like these Nashville guys on the power play are really good values for a power play point. I'm guessing, and I'd have to look. I honestly don't know off the top of my head how good Dallas has been on the kill. They've had not a ton of games, so maybe they're just kind of looking good over.
I think they've been terrible on the kill. Actually, really? I think
I don't know.
Worst teams.
I just don't know off the top of my head. I haven't thought to look at because the stats are so wonky this year with one team playing 10 games and the next playing like 20. So it's so hard to get a good grasp on exactly where it is. But if you're looking that up, Arvidsson plus 370 for a power play point, Ellis plus 390. It's like they don't think they're on the first unit, even though they were. It's kind of how it feels to me. Although, Yossi plus 260. So yeah, that's how it feels. Like they don't know they're there on FanDuel.
Yeah, I actually in Pennsylvania, I don't even have access to those numbers, so I can't sort of look at those myself, which is a bit weird. But yeah, so I still think that's fine in any case.
Okay. Are you ready to get over to the Colorado Vegas?
Yeah, take us away.
So yeah, Colorado Vegas, I guess at face value, we're looking at pretty much a pick 'em. And any slate you're going to get it. It's minus 105 for Colorado, minus 112 that we're looking at for Vegas. Vegas, the home team. Vegas and Colorado are both the premium teams in the Pacific. They played each other on Sunday. The game was a 1-0 dud. We saw a lot of changes, and I think a lot of them stick for now. Where Landeskog is confirmed out, correct?
We're assuming it's...
Yeah, it seems very unlikely, yeah.
Yeah, so Landeskog is a COVID situation, and Makar is not, but both of those guys sounded like they were both trending toward out on Tuesday and that they were sort of shooting for the weekend in order to get those two guys back. But again, overnight.
There's, I guess, a small chance that there could be a change of some variety to the Colorado Lions as they lost goose eggs, didn't score a goal. But what they ran last game was Rantanen, McKinnon, and Brandon Saad on the first line. Brandon Saad was not on the first power play. However, the first power play was Burakovsky, Kadri, McKinnon, Rantanen, and Taves. Assuming that sticks, which I think it probably would. They didn't get a ton of run on the power play. They got one attempt. It didn't go in. That does bring a lot of value to Burakovsky, especially on DraftKings. Kadri and him connect on now 5-on-5 and on the power play for more of a value stack. McKinnon with Saad, fairly priced. I don't think you're getting crazy good goal odds on any of these guys, though. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like any of them are really. It's like they kind of got this right over on DraftKings. So that's kind of the Colorado side. I think, you could get a little bit crazy with this. I do think both of these teams are, either any way you really want to go about it is fun and fine. Vegas was a bit more predictable, kind of running these same units they've been running, it seems like, for weeks now. The only difference was Pietrangelo did return. He was on the, I would say, de facto first power play. With Theodore going out, Martinez took the second unit. Theodore, we're not sure on, but I think he's also trending towards not playing.
Yeah, that one's definitely a toss-up. We didn't really get any word post-game on Saturday or Sunday because Vegas had a back-to-back there, so they didn't practice on Monday. So that's probably a morning skate. We'll know more about Shea Theodore. But yeah, him and Pietrangelo are definitely sort of interchangeable as far as those power play units go. They're both good plays. My sense on this game in general is just the under. It definitely worked for me on Sunday. I just was sort of seeing things that really pointed toward the under being the right play. Luckily for me, I played both goalies in Showdown, and that was a massive print fest. But, that's sort of the way I see this game happening again. It's not like that game was such an outlier, goaltender saved the day or whatever. No, it was kind of just a sludge fest. So under 6, I think, is a decent bet here. The player props that I'm thinking about are mostly related to this Landeskog situation for Colorado, namely in that, Burakovsky stepping up to the top power play unit without him, and then Brandon Saad on the Nate McKinnon line at 5-on-5. Both of those guys, I don't think have a ton of value on their to score odds. But I think if I had to pick one, Burakovsky at plus 275 would be my bet there. He's a nasty player. We know on DFS sites he's underpriced. So I don't think I'm quite extending to betting his goal prop, but definitely the one that I'm considering the hardest. Otherwise, in this game, Max Pacioretty shots, I like it a lot. Still, over 3.5 minus 134. That's about as much as I would pay for that in this matchup. So I think that's about an even odds bet. I'm certainly not touching, a guy like Kadri or William Karlsson in this matchup, just because I think it's a bit of a snoozer. So, anything else that I missed there?
No, I mean, I think the
defense.
I was going to say our random defenseman of the night that you could put a bet on if you want to get absolutely wild is maybe Jacob McDonald. Matt, I don't want to take too much of your thunder. I know he's becoming one of your golden children, but he is plus 1,200 to score, which, is definitely not to say that he is extremely likely to score a goal, but he's a guy that shoots the puck a ton. I am in the same boat as you. I thought we'd see him on that second power play unit. They put Connor Timmins on there, which was frustrating to think you have Bowen Byram and Jacob McDonald. Jacob McDonald definitely profiles to be a very good DFS asset when he plays, which isn't going to be always. If they get healthy, he'll probably find his way out of the lineup. But Matt, is there anything you want to mention about this guy?
No, I mean, he led the AHL last year in goals for a defenseman. Like, he's just the exact sort of prototype. Like, he's the Brent Burns of the AHL, basically. He came up, he played 20 minutes on Sunday night. So it's not like he didn't have a role. He just didn't have the power play role I was projecting. So for that reason, I think McDonald's in play on like a, small slate type DFS contest, but not necessarily someone I'm like, running to jam in like I would be if we saw Jacob McDonald power play 2 on Sunday. So, maybe we get news like, oh, hey, actually we're using this guy who's like TJ Brennan, but on steroids. TJ Brennan, another AHL superstar offensive output, never made it in the NHL type deal. Nothing too fancy there. Devontae's first unit, fine, but nothing, nothing to write home at on either betting or DFS.
If you're a frequent flyer on the natural stat trick, like I think we both are, and you just kind of don't limit anything, like if you don't limit time on ice and you just kind of look at like guys that are shooting a ton at a rate shooter, like this guy just popped out of nowhere on everything. I was like, who the heck is this guy? Like, where did he come from? So yeah, he's definitely that kind of guy. And, just 4-3-2 and 3 games, back to back on shots on goal. And even though he went down in shots on goal, his time on ice went way up. So he ended up almost in 20 minutes last game. So if they don't get anyone back on defense and he's in play. And like I said, I mean, a guy that led the AHL in goals last year for defensemen at 1,200 to score, it's not the dumbest thing you could do in the world. I wouldn't put the $1 million I wanted to put on Darlene or anything crazy, but $10 to get back 130, $20 gets you back, I don't know what, 260.
No, just like without the power play usage, it's not there for me. But let's get to the last game of the night. Theme of the day, another team coming off of the COVID protocol, Minnesota Wild, in LA to take on the Kings. We finally welcome back Kevin Fiala to our lives. It was a long time coming. I believe Fiala got suspended for 3 games. And then after those 3 games came their, lockdown. So it's been a while. But here we have Minnesota installed as favorites at -127. The over-under is 5.5. Thoughts on this game, and do Minnesota's sort of COVID absences, make you think the Kings are a good bet here?
No. I still like Minnesota. I mean, I really struggled to find myself liking the Kings outside of Adrian Kempe, who is my golden boy. Even though he didn't score a goal, he's still just my favorite of the bunch there. I don't think it's a bad idea inherently to bet the home team with a plus next to their name, but it's depending on what you get these odds at, it's pretty near a pick 'em. And I think Minnesota is just a far superior team. It's not like they're missing any. I mean, Brodin is a bit of a hurt, but the rest is, I'm not really missing anyone that I think is worthwhile. I guess maybe you could say Talbot as well, but both goalies have been fine there. I still think it's Minnesota here. I definitely will be having some Fiala in my DraftKings lineups. I think he is a pretty good value on the slate, but we'll get to that in a minute. Other than that, I think, putting some money on a multi-point game from Fiala plus 300 isn't also the worst idea in the world. I think that I will be having that in some capacity, and I'm not sure if there's any these DraftKings odds are a little wonky for me.
Yeah, no, it's we're assuming Jared Spurgeon plays. It's we're not positive on him though. He's I think he's with the team. I would need to double check that. I think we looked at it about an hour ago.
Yeah, he was. Okay. He flew with the team.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it sounds like he'll be back, but that also could be another guy to go with Brodin. But the rest, yeah, like you mentioned, they're third, fourth line type guys. The top line in Minnesota should be Eriksson Ek centering Parise and Kevin Fiala. We love that. We're not going to mince words. Eriksson Ek has been a guy we've been championing. So we'll see about the power play, how that shakes out. But that just makes Kevin Fiala, he should see 19, 20 minutes here. He's a beast. So his shot prop, 2.5, you have to pay -162 to get that number on the over. But I still like that. You're still talking 60-ish% of the time he needs to hit 3 shots. And Kevin Fiala has some of the best rate stats in the entire NHL. So
yeah, I know that. And
it's the Kings. So it's not too far-fetched.
Right. For sure. I mean, I don't understand why it's 2.5. Like I almost wish it was like 3 or 3.5 and just like a positive, because I just feel better about it. But no, definitely. I think it's I wouldn't say it's an easy, like absolute jam in Minnesota, but I do like them here. I think if I had to pick, I slightly like the over. That this LA team is seemingly finding offense in some capacity, but I still think they give up a pretty good amount defensively. They did put up a 6 the last time out, which was really to do with their first power play going nuclear. So it's hard to bet on that happening again, but I kind of like the idea of thinking that Minnesota could score 3 goals or more. The San Jose
Sharks ain't walking through that door.
No, I'm not. Yeah, I think this is a better team than Minnesota, but I really like the idea of Minnesota scoring more than 3 and thinking that LA could just put a puck in the net or 2. It just seems like it could make sense. So I kind of like the over. It's not anything I'm super duper high on. Again, we haven't seen Minnesota in so long, it's hard to say. And we don't have nearly enough data to assume a team coming back after a long stretch is going to be great or bad. Obviously, we could base it off the Sabres yesterday if we want, but that wouldn't be a good idea. So anything you want to add to that, or any other props you're finding just kind of while you're looking through stuff?
No, not really. Just sort of reinforcing my lean toward the Minnesota team side here. They were playing pretty well going into their forced break. And yeah, the Kings just have sort of been scuttling along, picking up some wins here and there, mostly due to, Anze Kopitar, dragging them to relevancy. But other than Kopitar, there's really not a ton to like here. Like I get the Adrian Kempe stuff. He's a good rate player and all that, but
so
he seems fairly priced on DFS sites and all that. Yeah. So there's nothing to, that I'm very excited for.
Would you bet the Kempe 2.5 over at -102 on FanDuel?
That sounds about right. So yeah, let's do it. I think he's probably the second guy there, shots wise, that I would want.
I was wondering what they had for Fiala, and they just don't have it.
Really? Huh.
No, just not there. Just not a shotgun goal prop. So, sorry.
Guess we'll see. Okay, so that does it for the 6 games. We can go over some of our top DFS stacks of the night. I did get someone asking about goalies, on our last show. So the thing about goalies is 1, they suck. 2, cross your fingers, shut your eyes, pick a guy. And 3, they really correlate with the team sides. We talk about like, I like the Minnesota side of this game. Usually that means, when a team's leading, their goaltenders tends to see more shots due to shot effects. And especially in addition to that, the goalie pricing on fantasy sites tends to correlate with their odds to win. There are some instances where there's just mispricings. But those actually aren't really known ahead of time, the night before. That's usually a day of thing. So that's just sort of my quick thoughts on it. DJ, I don't know if you had like a top goalie you were, thinking of or anything like that you just wanted to throw out there, but I just wanted to make sure we mentioned goalies at least, as a side comment.
Well, if we're talking like daily fantasy, is that what he was asking about? Daily fantasy in general? I'm guessing because, I don't know, like I'd never bet the shutout. It just seems like a fool's bet most of the time. But I think in daily fantasy, the way I construct my lineup is I don't put the goalie in first by any stretch of the imagination, but I look at the Vegas lines. I try to see where the money's going towards if I can in some capacity. So I know, where more people think if it's an over or under, if it's a team, and then check out, where the pricing correlates. And I like to look at both sites, FanDuel and DraftKings, and then see if there's one that's way priced up on one and not the other. Sometimes that might feed in. It's just not really maybe the best way of looking at it. But I definitely agree with what you said. If I have a stack I really like, I might be a little bit more inclined to play the goalie with it, just because of, like you said, if that stack goes for 2 or 3 goals and that team is now much more likely to win, that goalie should see more shots in weaker positions. Teams are more likely to shoot from anywhere when they're losing to try to create offense. So that's where you get those, low danger chances against. I think it's worthwhile to look at what teams in recent play and over the course of the season have given up less high danger scoring chances as well, showing that they're giving up more low danger scoring chances and they're getting to seeing more shots that are savable conceivably. Obviously, betting on a goalie on a night basis based off skill is a little bit difficult. Skill over the course of the season is going to come into play, but that's the way I do it, more or less.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, a couple of guys who stand out to me here. I already mentioned Anton Khudobin. He's probably the most expensive on any site, but definitely on DraftKings, he's the most expensive goalie at 8.4. I just think he's in the best spot. And then second, I like the under in Colorado Vegas. I think that, with Leonard seeming like he's on the shelf for a while, Marc-Andre Fleury, 7.7, nice little home goalie, been playing really well, Fleury has. So I like him at a bit of a discount. And even on the other side of that, Philip Grubauer, 7.5, that's also, I think, a pretty good number. So, and he should be starting. Yeah. So,
yeah, I think they said he was going to start. I agree with that. And, it's one of those things where, it's like, don't make your lineup bid a goalie for any specific reason. But if there's a goalie you like, it's worth trying to fit in. I don't know if there's ever going to be a perfect storm where there's a goalie that's just a must play, unless if there's a crazy misprice. So,
yeah, sure.
I don't know.
Okay, so top stacks of the night. Any lean there?
I mean, as I said on the Morning Skate podcast, it was Pittsburgh won, so I don't want to repeat myself. That is my favorite stack of the night, though, for
Yeah.
sure. I think that the rest, it might, I might need some more Morning Skate news and notes, but I definitely am in on, especially if Spurgeon doesn't play, the idea of getting Matt Dumba with Fiala. They're going to correlate on the power play. You could talk me into Parise with it. I don't think it's necessary. I think the two-man's good enough because I think there's a ton of value at wing and a lot of guys I want to get in. So that I like more than Parise, but it's worth looking at for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I will go to the Dallas side of things in this one. I think I like the stack there. I don't really want to play Joe Pavelski at his price, but honestly, in tournaments, the way that this is shaping up, I might need to play Joe Pavelski in tournaments because I think he should be about 5% owned on a smallish slate. It seems pretty good, especially when I don't love the spots for Nate McKinnon or things like that. So I like Joe Pavelski, and I'm probably just going to grab John Klingberg and Gurianov or something like that to cap off a power play stack there. Something that I was thinking up was the power play goals against per game just by team. Nashville actually leads the NHL in that regard so far this year. Dallas is seventh, giving up that many. So they giving up the most goals in the NHL on the power play, and Dallas's power play has been clicking. So I think getting a power play stack there is pretty nice. And with no Radulov, we have that certainty on, those guys will be on the top unit. It's just a matter of who the fifth guy is. And if we can get that ahead of time, we can sort of adjust our stacks to account for it. But yeah, give me Pavelski, Guryanov, and John Klingberg for my first stack.
Yeah, I mean, the one stack that I want to say, but we have no certainty in it. But if it does come together, that Zibanejad and Panarin are back together, that is I think a supreme spot, a really, really good value as well on this slate. And, Fox would make the most sense, I think, for the third.
And Fox is free on FanDuel, of course.
He's free. Yeah, he's free every single night. Yeah, he has just been the free square on FanDuel. So, if that does come together, I think that is, you could play Pittsburgh 1 and New York Ranger 1. That is really, really strong. If Panarin doesn't play, I might not end up trying to jam that in. I might just look to their first power play in general because I still do like the Rangers side. I like that game, the Rangers side. So I think you could talk me into Buchnevich in some capacity. He just wasn't playing with Zibanejad, but you could put those two together and hope maybe they find each other because maybe this Colin Blackwell thing isn't real. And you end up getting that super duper low. I mean, we'll just be mindful of when that game goes off at 7 p.m. and Eastern time and just make sure you see who they're actually skating with. But whoever's with Zibanejad, I think I might end up trying to find that.
Yeah, so I'm going to circle back to this Islanders-Sabres game because I kind of want a piece of the Islanders here again. So on Monday night, we saw the second power play of Brock Nelson, Leddy, Bailey, Wallstrom, Peugeot strike. That's kind of a mess from a stacking standpoint. So I'm probably going to just go a Brock Nelson stack with Jordan Eberle. I think that, Eberle's obviously a good spot on the top unit. And I want to grab Ryan Pulock as my guy sort of with that stack there. The Sabres just haven't been playing well. We saw actually Montour and McCabe, should be back based on their comments, but they each talked about how they had symptoms of COVID. They said it was rough on them, honestly. So kind of, a bit wondering, are they actually, 100% ready to go, or are the Sabres just desperate? So this Islanders team has been playing pretty well. And I think that, that second line gives you a lot of value just on the DFS sites in terms of what other stacks you can get in around it. And it should be pretty low owned too. So the other thing, I guess we should have done this before the DFS part, is our top bets of the night. So
I was just about to say, okay. Yeah. I mean, I'll just go with one. I think the multi-point game for Fiala is something I'm going to end up having. Not in a big parlay, maybe like a 2 or 3. with some other odds that I think are a little bit more favorable, but plus 300 for him to have 2 points is pretty cool on DraftKings. I don't think you can do multi-point on FanDuel Sportsbook, or at least I don't think so, right?
Right.
It just is what they have, right? He's a half a point or over, which is fair as well. But I think the 2 point plus 300, that seems pretty easy. Not easy money, obviously, it never is, but it seems like a pretty like could happen type of scenario. They have a lot of guys missing. He gets these huge minutes. He hasn't played in forever, so.
Yeah. So I don't want to steal your thunder here on the Brian Rust stuff, but he has been probably the absolute most reliable just bet in terms of his shot prop on the season. Yeah. So Brian Rust, was he over on FanDuel? Did you have him?
Oh crap! No, I just got out of it.
Okay, don't worry about it. But
no, they didn't have props up at all.
Oh, okay.
For that game. Yeah, okay. They just weren't there yet. Yeah, so they're going to be there, but I assume they'll be there again. It was, it was a mortal lock on Sunday.
It's been like minus 130-ish, which is just like silly. This guy's getting like 6 to 7 shots per game. He's absolutely smashing. He's playing with Sid on the top power play. Like he's just, one of the best in the business in terms of shooting. And 2.5 just does not give him the respect it deserves. So do you have another one for us?
I mean, I don't want to do another multi-point, so I'm going to do, just for Brad to score. I'm definitely going to look where it is, but I think he's going to see at least 20 minutes of ice, or at least 18 minutes of ice time. We'll be a little more conservative with top power play, and I just think he's actually a good player. I don't think that this is like a random guy we find on the top line that tries to fit the pieces together for a unit. I think he's actually a good player. Plus 335 to score on DraftKings. I'm not positive on the odds I saw over on FanDuel, but kind of shop it around if you can. And I think that he is, again, just mispriced here for the role. Sure. I would not put this in, a 10-way, or what was on 6 games, a 6-way parlay or of any variety. If you like this with the Rust, maybe something like that could be a nice little two-man unit there to go after. But yeah, he's a good player, just a good player, and a game that is leaning towards the 6.5. So let me look if I can find it quick. Jesper Brett to score on FanDuel is plus 320. So actually it's a little bit better on DraftKings.
Okay. I like the over in that game, but rather than sort of repeat the same favorite bet, I will take one from the Colorado Vegas game. If Shea Theodore is ruled out, I believe we had a number on Pietrangelo, if that was correct. In any case, I like the under in that game, but I also like some of the shots there.
I don't think Pietrangelo.
No, we didn't have Pietrangelo.
He doesn't exist on either site. I was actually looking at that. Like he just straight up isn't on FanDuel. I don't know where he is.
Then let's take the Patches, over shots. That one's, a tale as old as time at this point. Patches always treats me pretty well. So I will take Max Pacioretty on the over for shots.
Yeah. Pietrangelo just isn't on FanDuel Sportsbook.
Okay. Yeah.
He just doesn't exist.
He doesn't exist. It's fine.
He's not there. So if you, sorry, good luck. Can't bet on him.
Okay. So that'll just about do it for us here. So, big thanks to Prize Picks. Go over to prizepicks.com. Use our code MMN on sign up to get the match deposit bonus. Good stuff over there from them. And DJ, anything else before we get out of here?
Don't bet on Darlene.
That is a good strategy. So I am at Fake Moods on Twitter. DJ's at DJ_Mitchell94 right here. And best of luck on this Tuesday. See ya.